to another episode of The Last of Us Talk Show. I'm your host, Mikey, and today we are doing our Season 1, Episode 8, When We Are in Need, spoiler review. Now, before we get into this review, I just want to point out that we are coming up on the end of the season. This week's episode coming up is going to be the last episode of this season. It will not be the last episode of this podcast. I have a lot of things I want to discuss after the series or after the season has ended. So the shows won't come out as often as they do now. I'm not sure exactly how often I'm going to put out an episode, once a week, once every twice a week. We'll see how it goes. But I have a lot of topics I want to talk about to fill up the time while we're waiting for the next season to start, which could be a while. They're going to have to shoot it, edit it, get all the effects in there. They're saying it might not be able to, it might not release until early 2025. But there's so much to discuss and talk about. When I originally first created this podcast, the idea was I was going to do news updates about the series and all that, which I was unable to do. A lot of life events happened. I wasn't able to do that, but I'm wanting to do that for however long it takes to get to season 2. We'll do all kinds of news updates, just different talking topics, and just keep our love of this show going until we get our next season. All right, well, now you know the plan for this show. Let's talk about the Season 1, Episode 8, When We Are in Need, spoiler review. Again, this one was directed by Ali Abbasi, starring again Pedro Pascal, Bella Ramsey, and then in this episode we had Scott Shepherd as David, that creep, and Troy Baker playing James, his right-hand man. To open up the episode, we get like this wide shot of this town that is covered in snow, and we cut to David. He's reading from the Bible. I believe he says Revelations 21. And then there's this girl crying in the room, and David goes over to her and to seemingly comfort her. And, after he comforts her, she asks when they can bury her dad. And David says, well, the ground's too cold. We'll bury your dad in the spring. And you can tell everybody in the room is, I don't know if everybody in the room believes that is going to happen. Everybody else, or at least quite a few people, don't believe that's going to happen by the look on their faces. And we're outside. David talks to James. They have a conversation about how much venison, and then he says, or elk rather, is left. So I guess here we're getting a hint that when they talk about venison, it is not it's not talking they're not talking about animals. So if they're talking about a specific animal, they'll say the animal that they want to know that's left. Venison seems to be a code word for human here. Only a couple weeks of elk is left if everyone is put on rations. But James says some people spotted deer nearby, but it's not a sure thing. Sometimes people see what they want to see. David is afraid that James is losing faith in him, and James says, well, the last 6 months have been really hard, but he's still with him. So we can assume here that they have, I wouldn't say that they've been eating humans for 6 months because they never give us a exact timeline, but sometime within the last 6 months, I believe they had to start, turning to cannibalism. And then David just tells him, okay, well, go get the other men. We're going to go hunting. They're going to go look for these deer that these other men supposedly saw. Then we cut to Ellie. Just what a, touching hard scene to watch here. You can see how in bad shape Joel is, and Ellie is like just trying to give Joel water by, uh, putting little drops of water on her finger and rubbing it on Joel's lip just so he can get some, uh, just so we can get some water. And she's like eating like little scraps of food and then leaves a little scrap for Joel. He can't feed himself or drink, so Ellie's doing it for him. Just, yeah, so sad to see Joel in that state. Uh, Ellie knows that they're running out of food, so she tells him she's going to that she's going to be right back. And we cut to her outside with the rifle. She's hunting. She first comes across a rabbit that she starts to kind of run after and then falls. Then she comes across a deer. She is able to shoot it, using the method that Pedro or that Joel had taught her to shoot. But she doesn't hit a perfect shot. She doesn't drop the deer. So the deer runs off and she has to follow its trail. Thankfully, it's snowy out, so she can follow. It'll be even easier to see the trail of blood, so she's able to follow it. And we cut to David and James, who have found that same deer. They're planning on taking it for themselves before whoever shot it gets there, because they're obviously desperate for food. We see Ellie come up on them with the rifle and tells them to put their guns down and back away. And again, this was really great from Bella Ramsey. The way she like lowers her voice, trying to sound more tough. Like, remember that Bella Ramsey is British, so this is not her natural accent. So then to, be impersonating an American accent and then do that same accent and try to lower your voice. It, I was really impressed that she could do that. Is already hard to impersonate another accent right, but then try to impersonate that accent and sound tough at the same time. I tried doing it myself, and I'm not gonna do it here, but I tried doing it myself with a British accent. And I was like, I can't do both. I can do sound tough in my own accent, and I can impersonate a British accent, but I can't, I can't impersonate a British accent and then lower my voice to sound tough at the same time. But anyways, David says that they need this food for their group because it's a large group of women and children, and they will trade for it. And so Ellie asks for medicine that can treat infections. And David tells James to go get the medicine, and James kind of looks at him, and David's like, "It's not code for anything, James. Just go get it." So Ellie lets them know that if James comes back with other people, that she's going to put one right in between David's eyes. And they're like, "Okay, yeah, we know." And David tells Ellie that their town is 4 miles away, so it's going to take James a while to get back, and he offers to make a fire. So she agrees, and they go sit in like this little nearby, I guess it's like a little cabin or something that was run down or something. And they build a fire under this cover while they're waiting for James to return. And they're just, talking about each other. David is revealing a lot about himself and trying to learn something about Ellie. He reveals that he's a preacher, and he has followers back in his town that they chose to follow him, and that he believes that everything happens for a reason. And Ellie is skeptical of this, and he says, "No, I can prove it. Let me tell you, Ellie." Oh, he doesn't say Ellie because he doesn't know Ellie's name yet, actually, because Ellie hasn't told him her name. So he says, "Let me tell you that, recently I sent out 4 men to go scavenge in a nearby town, and one of the men, who was a father, was killed by this crazy man who happened to be traveling with a little girl. And Ellie gets a look on her face like, oh, this man knows who I am, and now I'm in danger. Just as this happens, James returns. He has a pistol, and he is coming from the backside of this little cabin that they're taking cover in. So he's able to get the drop on Ellie, has the gun pointed at her. She gets up quickly, points the rifle back at him, and David tells James just to give Ellie the medicine, throw it to her. And um, Ellie goes down to grab it, and David is like yelling at Ellie, hey, you're not going to survive on your own, and I can protect you. But Ellie just takes the medicine and runs off back to Joel. We see her with Joel, and of course, she doesn't know where to put this penicillin. She just has like this bottle of penicillin and a syringe. Where she's supposed to do with it, she doesn't know. I don't know. So she just injects it straight into the site of infection and hopes that it will work. She lays down with Joel here and puts her head on his shoulder, and you can see him lean his head on her head. Very sweet, touching moment, like to see how bad that Ellie wants Joel to be okay, and Joel's in this moment also trying to comfort her, like, yeah, I'll be okay. You're, just at least trying to comfort her that she's doing good. It seemed like to me. Then we cut back to David's town, and the widow of the man that Joel killed is given meat to cook, and she's like, "What is this?" And she's told it's venison, and she starts to make a stew with it. Again, to me, I don't know if she knows for sure, but I mean, to me, the people who are in the know that whenever somebody says venison in this group, that they are specifically talking about human. That's their code word. Um, so, I mean, if she does know, how horrible is that? That she knows that, okay, well, this is probably my husband, and I'm about to make a stew out of him. Ugh, just disgusting. David and James arrive to the steakhouse here, where everybody has been given some food, and they have the deer with them. So, everybody you would think would be excited, but everybody's giving David like a weird look, and they got a vibe about him, right? So David says, okay, I know. Everybody's heard that we found the girl who was with the man that killed Alec, right? And he says, don't worry, I'm going to lead a group tomorrow to find them and bring that man to justice. And then Hannah, the daughter of this man who was crying earlier in the episode, says that he should kill both of them. And David walks over to her and slaps her. Slaps her so hard she falls to the ground. And David tells her, oh, you may think you don't have a father, but you will always have a father, and you will show him respect when he's speaking. This sick, disgusting man trying to step in and say that he is now, the father figure of this girl. Oh God, David is so sick. I absolutely hate this guy. um, and he actually like reaches out his hand to her and makes her take it and gets her back up to sit at the table. And then he sits at the table with her. And then the mom brings over like this huge plate of bowl to David. You can see everybody else has like a small ration of stew, and David gets this huge heaping plate of food. Apparently, he has no problem eating the human meat as long as everybody knows that he has the most and that he's the most important. So he gets to eat the most food. I guess he just doesn't care what it is. David says grace and everyone eats. You can hear all the like spoons, clinking on the bowls. And yeah, I mean, you see James, he when he goes to eat his, like he's, everybody else like dug in and is diving in to eat this food, and James was kind of apprehensive and eats it kind of slow because he's obviously one of the people that is in the know that they are eating human. Then we cut to Ellie tending to Joel again, giving him another shot, and she goes outside, um, get some water for the horse, and while she's out there, she notices that David and his men are coming to the neighborhood that her and Joel are in. And David warns the men that if the man is still alive, he's probably still dangerous, and um, but he wants them to bring Ellie back with them alive. And James says, you know, maybe it's God's will to let the girl die, David. And David turns around and he does not look happy about that. Again, this sick, disgusting man. Not only has he like manipulated this group of people into following his view of religion, but he also has put himself as high a level as God, as being the Father, as being God to this group. So he gives James a look like, hey, if I say it's not God's will, then it's not, because I am Him. Is the look I get from him. Then we cut back to Ellie. She's warning Joel that there's men coming, and she leaves him a knife and says, if anybody comes down here, you got to kill him, Joel. And she runs off. She blocks the door that's down to the basement that he's in with like a China hutch or something. And she gets on the horse and runs out into the neighborhood, shoots at the men, and tries to lead them away from the house that Joel is in. She takes off on the horse, but James is able to cut off the pass. He lines up a shot on the horse and kills the horse, and Ellie hits the ground hard. She's thrown from the horse, and she looks like she's concussed. James and the other men arrive to Ellie before David gets there, and one of the other men tells James to kill Ellie. But of course, David catches up before James does this. He shoots a shot in the air, and he goes over to the unconscious body of Ellie himself and picks her up. He tells two of the other men to come with him and grab the horse and bring it back to the town, and have the other men go door to door searching for Joel. We see that they leave, and then the men that are left behind, they're going into houses separately. So one man finds a house that Joel is in. He sees that the little, furniture that Ellie put in front of the door that goes down to the basement looks kind of out of place. So he goes down there. He sees the mattress that Joel was laying on. Thankfully, Joel is not laying on that mattress anymore. But you could see that there's a blanket on it, blood all over it. So the man knows, okay, the guy must have been down here at least recently. So he goes down. He's searching in this basement, and Joel is able to get this awesome stealth kill on this man. Sneaks up right behind him, stabs him right in the neck. He's still weak, though, so he has to hold on to this man for dear life still, and wrestle this man to the ground while still holding that knife in his neck. And we just get this gruesome looking kill. It was, oh my gosh, that image is gonna be hard to get out of my head. We cut back to Ellie, who is now locked in a cage back in David's town, and David is telling Ellie that the others want to kill her, but he stopped them. Trying to sound like, oh well, he's so special for, and so nice and kind for not letting them kill her. He tells her that he can help her and protect her. And he tells Ellie that she has to face reality. Joel is dying, and that part of her life is ending, and he's offering her a new beginning. And that if she doesn't trust him, that she's going to be alone. Her worst fear, right? And we go back to the town that Joel is in, and we see that Joel was able to incapacitate one of the other men outside. One of the other men comes across him, and then David is able to again like stealthily get behind this guy as well, and then hit him with the butt of a gun and knock him out. When the men wake up, they're both like tied to furniture, and Joel stabs one of them in the leg and tells him that he's going to tell him what he wants to know, or he's going to pop his kneecap off. Um, and Joel wants to know where Ellie is and where they are on the map, so that he can go get Ellie. Just like he did with the old couple, only obviously we're being a lot more violent here. Again, I'm so glad we got to see this scene. I was afraid maybe they just did that with the old couple and they would skip this scene because it makes Joel look so violent, which we know he was in the past. So now we get to see how violent Joel can be when he's protecting his family, whether it's Tommy and Tess or now Ellie. Right, he can do some really dark things. So he puts the bloody knife in the man's mouth, the butt end of it, and makes the man mark the map with the bloody end on where they are and where Ellie is. And the man's like, that's the truth. You can go ask the other man, just like Joel said he was going to do. And Joel just stabs this guy, kills him. And the other man says, he told you what you wanted to know, and you know what? I'm not going to tell you anything. And Joel just says, "That's okay. I believed him." And then he smashes that man with a lead pipe. Just again, gruesome brutality that we're getting in this episode. And back at David's town, Ellie, she sees an ear, a human ear, on the ground at the butcher's table on the room that she's locked in. And David, at this moment, brings her some food, and she's like, "Oh, you eat people, you're gonna chop me into tiny pieces, is that what you're gonna do here?" And he's like, "Well, I'd rather not." And David says, "Only a few people know, but I would have told you sooner or later. I guess I'm telling you sooner, but I would have told you." And he says, "It was a last resort, but he couldn't let his people starve. But they follow him and love him. This sick, disgusting man couldn't even give these people a choice. He wants these people to follow him as a god. So rather than let people make their own choice and decide to leave this group if they wanted to because they didn't want to eat humans, he would rather just keep feeding them humans and keep them under his control. This sick, disgusting man." Yeah, but David doesn't think Joel would judge him because he's keeping his people alive, and thinks Joel would do the same thing because he took another man's life to save Ellie, not to protect himself, but to save Ellie. David tells Ellie, reminds him of himself. She's smart, a natural leader, and violent. She has a violent heart, and he knows because he has a violent heart himself, and he's always struggled with it until the cordyceps showed him the way. They're fruitful, they multiply, and they use violence when needed. And he's telling Ellie all this because he thinks she can handle it like nobody else can. He feels like he's surrounded by sheep, and he just wants an equal and a friend. And Ellie says, "Well, what about my friend?" And he says, "Well, I can have the other men stop searching for them because they follow me, and they do whatever I tell them to do. And if you join me, they would do whatever they tell us to do." And he puts his hand on her hand, and then he says, "Oh." And then she puts her hand, her other hand on top of his hand, like she's now she's pretending like she's going to buy into what David is saying, where she has not been this entire time. And of course, she's not. She snaps his finger and breaks it, and she tries to take the keys to the cell, but he grabs her, bashes her head on the side of the cage, and David's like, "Oh, just think of what I'm going to tell the others now." And Ellie says, "Oh, well, tell them Ellie." And he's like, "What?" And he's like, "Ellie, that's my name." And so now she finally tells David what her name is, and she says, tell them Ellie is the little girl who broke your fucking finger." And then he just responds, "Well, how did you put it? Tiny little pieces," and then walks away. We see Joel Here he's like walking through walking to the town, and he finds like this shed. It's got the dead horse in it. It has a bunch of equipment in it, and then he comes across the dead bodies that have been hung up and prepared to be butchered and eaten. So of course now he's like really worried. He's got to get to Ellie quick, right? And David and James, we cut back to that. They are fighting with Ellie in the cage and dragging her out of it, and they put her up on. Well, first Ellie bites David's hand, and they get her up on the butcher table, and they're about to like put this butcher knife through her, right? And Ellie yells out, "I'm infected," and sound nowhere. So are you now, David. And he looks at the bite on his hand, and she's like, "Check my arm, check my arm." And they roll up her sleeve, and sure enough, they see the site where she had been bitten, and the infection started to grow there. And Ellie says, "Everything happens for a reason, right?" And David, he looks at it. He's like, "This can't be real. She would have turned by now." And James just looks like, "Well, it looks pretty real to me." And they're distracted just long enough for Ellie to grab that butcher knife and like plant it right in the side of the neck of James, killing him. And then she makes a run for it out of the room. Um, she tries like getting outside, but all the doors are locked to the steakhouse. So she grabs like this fiery log, and when David comes into the room, she throws it at him, and it sets the um, room on fire. Basically, it spreads pretty fast. David is like going all around the room searching for Ellie. Ellie is able to find a knife and kind of hides in a cabinet, and uh, David is yelling out for Ellie this entire time, saying he's gonna, how good he could have been to her, and now he has decided that he's gonna keep her alive and teach her some things, right? She is able to run out, stabs him in the side, but he throws her down hard on the ground. We know that she's already been concussed recently. She hits her head hard on the ground, so she is stunned. And then David kicks her in the stomach, knocking her over onto her back, and then he mounts her. David is a lot bigger than Ellie, so she can't like fight back at all. Thankfully, the butcher blade is close to them on the ground. She grabs it, boom, hits him right in the face with it, and now she mounts David, and she just starts hacking away, including that initial hit. So she grabs that blade, boom, hits him initially, gets on top of him, hits him 21 more times, so like 22 times, like she hacked into this guy with that butcher blade. And then we see Ellie exit the steakhouse on her own. Joel did not make it there in time to save her physically, but Joel now arrives and approaches her from behind and grabs her. She starts to panic, and she's like, "Get off me, get off me." And Joel turns around and says, "Look, it's me, it's okay." And Ellie hugs him, and Joel says, "Oh, it's okay, baby girl, I got you." And what a touching scene, right? Joel puts his jacket around her, and they start to walk away from David's town, and it fades to black. And that was the end of the episode. Amazing episode it was. Amazing performances by everybody. Uh, Scott Shepard had to be like one of the creepiest men ever alive, and he pulled that off. He was definitely creepy. He had to play a sick, disgusting man, and he came off as sick and disgusting. Uh, and I thought the end scene here was amazing because think about it. Both Ellie and Joel had to face their worst fears this episode. Ellie was alone. She wasn't with a loved one. She was alone. Joel, um, his worst fear is failing Ellie at this point. And both of their fears happen. Ellie ends up alone. And Joel fails Ellie, but they're both able to save each other at the same time because Joel was dying, right? And we saw that Ellie was able to give him the care he needed to make sure that he didn't die, so she's not going to be alone. And Joel was there to save Ellie's humanity because we don't know how this event could have uh, just made her lose all of her humanity and her sanity, right? Uh, Everything that she just went through, uh, being kidnapped, being potentially, uh, you know, killed to be eaten, and then having this sick, disgusting pedo try to, uh, you know, assault her. And then uh, Joel is here to save her humanity and be there for her just in her time of need, and hopefully bring her back, uh, bring her humanity and sanity back that she was just about to lose, probably. So yeah, just a really great episode overall. I was real as a game player. I was really happy with this episode. There was a scene left out that we will talk about when we get to the game comparison episode, but again, overall I'm really happy with this episode, and I'd love to know what you thought of this episode. Um, I think an interesting question is how many people do you think knew were that they were eating humans, and the others who don't specifically know, do you think they know and that they are just willingly being ignorant so that they can eat because they know, well, we got nothing else, but I need to eat. I probably know how they got this food, but I need to eat, so I'm going to do it anyways. Let me know in the comments what you think about that, and make sure that you hit the subscribe button, leave those comments. Same thing for our Apple Podcasts or whatever podcast app you're listening on. Hit that follow button, subscribe button, leave reviews. Those really help get more people into the community. And yeah, I can't wait to see the last episode and then talk about that, and keep going forward after that. So until next time, endure and survive.